In January 2024, I had the most brilliant idea to go on a no-spend year to curb my overspending and overconsumption. I was frustrated financially with how I was handling money, and I decided to go to the most extreme way to take matters into my own hands. And here's an update on how things are going. If we haven't met yet, I'm Chrissy, nice to meet you, and welcome back if you have. I apologize that there hasn't been any no spend updates. This is actually my fault, but I actually didn't plan to document this journey on YouTube. I documented most of this journey on TikTok, and that ended in June or July 2024. I'm gonna give you guys an update, things that I learned, things that I loved about the challenge, things I didn't love so much about the challenge, and things to watch out for if you plan to do a no spend / no buy year in 2025. As someone who spends a lot, it was incredibly difficult, and I didn't meet my set of rules every single month, but they were there to use as my parameter. So here's a reminder of what my set of rules were. It included no takeouts, no going out to eat. I had a shopping budget of I think it was £100, and then what I didn't spend, I'd save. I actually didn't buy any clothes during this time, which was so refreshing. I think it was good to also get a grip of my style, to shop my closet and just kind of see what I have before deciding what to get next. So I didn't actually find that to be a huge problem. My biggest problem was takeaways. Do you know what? I'm gonna give myself credit because I think before this year, I didn't see, this is gonna sound so bizarre, but I didn't necessarily see cooking as an option. I cooked if I was in the mood to, whereas now, since the challenge, I've kind of rewired my brain to cook because there's no alternative. There's more around this, but I also recently started a 75 hard challenge, which focuses on clean eating, and you can't really do that with a takeaway. So I think that also helped reframe my brain around ordering food or buying food, because I wanted to make my own fresh food. But outside of that, because that's going to get confusing, I think that one of the most difficult parts was takeaways and eating out, because cooking is not something that my brain finds natural. So that was the most difficult part. I think I spent the most amount on food throughout this challenge, because I think at the beginning when the challenge was new and there was the adrenaline, I was completely fine with cooking. But then as I kind of plateaued and I was busy in work and life, I still continued to get takeaways because I was like, well, I need to eat, but I'm not going to cook. So that was definitely the most difficult part. When it comes to saving, my reasoning for doing this challenge wasn't actually focused around savings. And I think it really annoyed me because a lot of the articles that came out kind of pushed that messaging. I think saving is a whole different conversation, but this for me personally was purely about cutting down on overspending and overconsumption. And then whatever happened outside of that, how much I saved, how much I invested, was purely a bonus, because the main thing for me was changing the habit. I think that was my complete main focus. And I think it's so important that when you do this challenge, you decide exactly what you're supposed to be getting out of this. I think for everyone it will be different, whether it's you're saving for a down payment on a house, or you're saving for a car, or you're saving for a holiday. I literally just needed to stop pressing add to cart. That was my only goal. And I think I managed to achieve that in some ways. I did become less impulsive. So yeah, those are my updates. I did end the challenge early because, again, I genuinely think the weather has something to do with it. If you're not somewhere that if you don't live in a country that's weather dependent, or you live in a hot country, this might be easier for you because you don't see hot weather as a treat. But I live in the UK, which means that it's constantly cold, rainy, and grey. And as soon as the summer months started to appear, the no spend challenge declined. It literally declined, that partially with the weather. So January, February, March was super easy. April was difficult because the sun's just starting to come out. Everyone's in a good mood. Everyone wants to go out. May was my birthday month. And then June was the peak of summer starting. So I was literally this is impossible. So I ended around June. So that was one reason. Number two, I think a year-long challenge is a long time. I think if you're gonna do a year-long challenge, there has to be a less, do you know what? I don't think there has to be a less drastic measure. I do think it's possible if that's your goal. It's completely possible. I think for me, someone made a really good point where they compared it to yo-yo dieting. I think it's a type of challenge that doesn't necessarily have the healthiest financial mindset. And I say that because it doesn't teach you control, it teaches you restriction. And I think there's a very big difference. Pros, I got a hold of my money management. It became very meticulous, and I love that. I think that's one of the traits that hasn't left me. Like, I'm very aware and I can now track my spending very efficiently. So I got really good at budgeting, and I got better at kind of like seeing where everything was going and not feeling like money was just slipping through my fingers. It feels more now like I'm in control and I'm making the decisions, as opposed to letting impulsiveness make those decisions for me. Pro number 2, it curbed my spending appetite. I didn't actually think that this could happen because I thought it was just innate. I was like, I like to spend, there's nothing anyone can do about it. But it genuinely curbed my appetite for spending, and it taught me, I don't want to say it taught me the value of a dollar, because it's like go outside and touch some grass, but it genuinely did. I think it made me like put things into perspective of like how much I'm spending. So for example, before I would easily buy like a £4 coffee and not think about it. Whereas now I'm like, yeah, it's only £4, but that adds up over time. Or if I'm buying a takeaway, I'm like, yeah, it's only £20, but like £20 over the course of 5 nights adds up over time. And then when it comes to like, for example, like buying clothes, this one's interesting. It changed my taste in clothes to things that are higher quality, because now I'm like, if I buy it once, if I buy it for the right price, I don't have to buy it twice. As opposed to like, let me just buy this £5 top and then I can buy loads when I need it. So it really changed like my appetite around spending, and it also changed my appetite around saving. So before, I think I would say that I was more of a spender first and save what I had later. Whereas now I've gotten comfortable with saving first and then being comfortable with whatever's left after. And this is one thing that I didn't prioritize before, but I think there's a bunch of factors involved in this. Like, I'm also, I don't want to say I'm getting older, because like I literally just turned 26, but I'm getting older in the sense of like my financial goals are changing. Before it might have been to like go out and have the most experiences, where now I'm like, oh, like I want to save for later on in life. But it also helped me kind of like get to grips with that process and be like, I prefer saving and investing versus buying something nice or going out to eat. So it really helped like completely, I guess, drastically make that change for me. So it, what's the word? It like helps with my delayed gratification, basically. And that's now become my innate version. And I think what's most surprising is that I thought these were traits that I just didn't have, but I think it's more so just learning that these are habits that you have to practice in order to become that person. And I didn't see it like that before. I just thought, well, I have it so I can spend it, as opposed to like, no, there's a different way to go about this. And I thought maybe it'd be more difficult for me to make that change. And I think what was most surprising is how quickly that happened. Like, I knew you could change, but I thought it would take time. We're like going through some things, we're getting older, but it was literally like a switch, like, oh, this is nice to be able to like manage my money like this. And you do feel more powerful, like being able to manage your money like that and knowing like you're doing what's best for your financial future. Like, there's something really empowering about it. And I think that's why it switches so quickly, because you feel like you're making the right decision for later you, and you see that building up in front of you. One thing that I didn't expect to happen is that it changed my brain from rushing around all the time and being like thoughtless. So I slowed down loads and I became more mindful. Now this happened like in very interesting ways. For example, I would be rushing to get ready to go somewhere, and in the back of my mind, I'd be like, oh, it's fine, I'll just catch an Uber. Because that was an option, because that spend didn't like clock in my brain. I was like, I'll just get an Uber, it's fine. Whereas now, I'm like, I need to get ready on time because I don't want to spend £10 on an Uber to the station, when if I get ready on time, I could just get the bus. And that meant that I was getting ready from earlier, planning more, being more organized, so I wasn't spending money as a penalty for not planning ahead. And I think that was a change that I didn't expect, because to me, it was literally just like, I just want to stop spending on clothes. Like, I just want to stop buying nice things all the time, going out to eat, etc., etc. But these were almost like byproducts of like planning things out properly. And it's the same thing for like meal planning. Again, I don't naturally like to cook. I don't naturally think to cook. I'm naturally like, oh, I could order something. But But because I was in this process of like deciding not to spend on takeaways, it meant that I had to think ahead for meal planning. And that's not really something my brain likes to do, but it trained it really well to get into that process. So now, even though I'm not doing the no spend challenge, I haven't automatically like reverted back to my old ways. I've kind of taken that into this new person that I am. And yeah, there might be like 1 or 2 days where I might miss that or like not adhere to that because of life happens. But because it's more responsible and more controlled now, I don't feel as bad like when I order takeaway, because I know that like I would prefer to plan a meal and cook that meal anyway. So that's been nice. And I think I've been trying to be an organized person for like the last 5 years. I mentioned this probably in one of my YouTube shorts about this journey. And I have not been able to be an organized person. Like I've always been like an on the spot thinker. Like I'll have a long day and not think about what I'm going to eat for dinner. And then I'll get home and be like, I'll just eat some cereal. I'll just order a takeaway. Whereas now I don't recognize the organized hun I am today. Like type A is scared of me, okay? So that's been a really nice change that's lasted throughout the challenge. Now for the cons. While it managed to change the way I think about finances, it made me more organized, it made me more responsible and feel more powerful with my money. There is a fear that it instills, not a fear, a guilt that it instills in you when it comes to spending. And I don't like that. I think, what's the best way to explain this? Like, yes, money is what we use to like live our lives in terms of like we buy food, we buy clothes, but it's also a currency of experience. And I think every time I bought something, or if I'd think about spending on something, or if I was going on a new experience, there would be a guilt that I'm not staying true to the no spend challenge. Now, obviously, sacrifice is incredibly important here, and there's a season for sacrifice and there's a season for splurging. But it did put that like, I don't know, I guess every time I spent money, I'd be doing like loads of calculations. My heart would sink a little bit. And I don't like that relationship with money because I think it's just as bad as overspending. It's almost the same as like when your parents told you not to get a credit card and then you didn't get a credit card and now you don't have a credit score. Like I think there is a certain level of you have to spend money to make money. You have to like, you know, like you can't be scared of money and you can't run away from it to curb overspending. There has to be a middle ground. And someone really brilliantly compared it to yo-yo dieting when I was speaking about it on TikTok, where like you can be an overspender, but if you fully restrict yourselves, it's like a rubber band effect. Like you keep being pulled back because it's so different to who you naturally are. I think people who are natural savers are not like, or naturally don't spend that much, it's easier for it because it's closer to who they really are. But when it's two worlds that are so far apart, you risk having a yo-yo relationship with money where like you won't spend anything and then you'll go out and like have a big splurge and you're like, oh no, that just that one time, I won't do it the next time. And it becomes almost like a binge and restrict process if you want to compare it to eating. And I think that's a very unhealthy ground to be on. So you have to be very careful with how you go about this challenge. And I think some ways to do it are, I would 100% not recommend doing it for a year. I think a year is a really long time. I think there's certain things you cannot do for a year, like no takeaways for a year or no new clothes for a year. Those are fine. But like a full challenge, if you're a complete overspender, is difficult and you risk that yo-yo effect happening because almost like you're rebelling against your true, I don't want to say true self because I do think like these are all learnable habits or teachable habits, but it's baby steps. And if you don't take the right steps, you'll have that yo-yo effect happening. So again, I stopped at 6 months, would not recommend a year. And next time round, I'm doing it in 3-month batches and only in winter because summer, I like to be outside. So January, February, March, and October, November, December will likely be my no spend time. And then April to September is like it's like off season and on season. But yeah, I think just watch out that you don't end up in a process of yo-yoing between overspending and not spending. Brown and gold advice. So if you are planning a no buy, no spend for 2025, here are my updated learnings and advice from my experience. Number 1, make rules that fit your lifestyle. If you love traveling, you love adventure, I would not recommend you saying no travel during your no spend year, because you will be miserable and you will not think this is worth it, and then you'll rebel against the whole challenge and this yo-yo dieting thing will happen. I think you have to implement rewards into this. So for example, if takeaway isn't that important to you, or buying clothes isn't that important to you, you can say, if I stick to this for 6 months, then I can have my reward, which is traveling or going on an adventure. So you completely build this challenge around your lifestyle, what you like, what you don't care for, and what you see as a reward in your life. So for me, takeaways, I spent the most on them, but it's not something that I miss or something that I love or something that I get excited to have. So I can easily tell myself, we're gonna do a challenge of no takeaways, because all it requires for me is more planning, as opposed to like giving up something that I inherently love. I love clothes, but I'm also trying to shop more consciously, more mindfully. So I can set a rule of like, you have this much of a budget to shop every 3 months, because I'm looking forward to that time and I see it as a reward. So if I go 3 months without like breaking the rules of my no spend, I get 1 new item. So that feels like a game to me, and it makes it more interesting, and it makes it like a reward, as opposed to like, you're not allowed to buy a single thing in 2025. So that like rules and rewards system helps loads, but it has to be built around you. I think that's the main thing. Number 2, I think this is really important, and this is something that I didn't necessarily do last time around, because again, I was purely just trying to cut a bad habit. So I wanted to cut my overconsumption and overspending, which means that I didn't set financial goals, because I was like, whatever happens, happens. I just want to see how I do on this. But one thing I will say is seeing money like build up in your bank account is a big motivator. Like that's the thing that will probably keep you going the longest, because if you see that money building up, you will not want to spend it. So I'd say set financial goals, because you can see a direct impact of the sacrifices that you've made. So if I say no takeaway, then maybe you have a pot where it's like, the money that I didn't use for takeaway this month, I put it in that pot. And the more you see it build up, the less likely you are to want to spend it, because it's like, oh, I put all that money in there. Like, I don't want to take away from that. I don't want to subtract from that. Look at all my hard work. So I think that's a really good way to keep you going for longer too, if you do decide to do the entire year at once. I think that's it. I think that's everything I can debrief you on about the no spend challenge. I think I would love to document my new version of this in 2025. So I guess I'll see you guys in January to kickstart the no spend 2025. But good luck to everyone that's trying this. I wish you the best of luck. It's definitely not an easy thing to do. And I think deciding that you want to take control of your money is one of the best things that you can do in life. So you're already part of the way by deciding that this is the right thing for you. And I'd love to hear how it's going, why you're doing it, everything. But yeah, subscribe to my channel for more, and make sure you follow me on Instagram and on TikTok for more context, because I'll be everywhere and all over the place with different parts of this story, but I'll do better in 2025. Bye.